Hello there, Algebra 2A. Welcome to Lesson 3.5, Graphing Linear Inequalities and Systems. So our central question is, how do you sketch linear inequalities, okay? So for the most part today, what you're going to need is, well, this paper, pencil. A ruler will be helpful if you have a ruler to make some nice lines. And other than that, we'll get started. So it's really not much different than graphing regular lines, okay? The difference now is we have this sign there. Just for you to remember, this is a greater than sign, greater, and this is the less than sign. So that can be helpful moving forward. So as we graph these, basically the first idea is pretend it's just a regular y equals negative x minus 1. So this is a little review of graphing. You should be more comfortable with this. I know some of you struggle with it. Remember, where would we start? We would start at negative 1, okay? And we would have a slope of negative 1 over 1. So negative 1 over 1, negative 1 over 1. Boom, 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 boom. Now, before I connect those, there are a few other things. So here are the steps for today. 1, graph like a usual graph. Graph like usual. 2, okay, step 2 is choose a line type. And what I mean by that is, so here's some nice things to know. If it is greater than or less than, you use a dashed line. If it is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, you're going to use a solid line. And lastly, you need to shade the graph. If it is greater than, you're going to shade above the line. If it's less than, you're going to shade below the line. And I will show you all those. So definitely have this stuff as we move forward here through this lesson. Okay, so I'm going to connect these with, we have a less than sign, so that means it's going to be a dashed line. Doesn't need to be perfect, but just kind of dashing it through from there. What that means is there are actually not any solutions right on that line. It's kind of like a boundary. Okay, so we'd have a dashed line. Now for shading, what we can basically do is, since it's solved for y, I know that all of the answers above the line are going to be the solution. So we actually have a nice little shaded region here as to what we need to graph. So when you're deciding to shade, it must look like y is greater than or y is less than or equal to, so forth. Okay, and that tells you above or below. And that's it. Once you have the line type, you graph it and you shade it, you're good to go. Let's look at number 2, okay? This one, so we're going to pretend like it's just a negative 3. Well, remember, y is a horizontal line. So, little review of graphing at negative 3. What type of line should we use? A dashed line, because it is less than. So a dashed line right across. Now we have to think, what values of y are less than or below the negative 3? Well, that's going to be everything down below our dashed line. So everything below that dash is where the solutions are. Okay, let's look at some more. Practice will make perfect. So number 3 here. First, let's solve for y. So we have negative y is less than negative x minus 2. I subtracted x. Divide by negative 1. When you divide by a negative, you need to change the sign. So remember all that stuff. X plus 2. So be careful, got to change the sign of that one. So we're going to graph like usual. Something I'm going to know is it's going to be a dashed line. And what else will we know? We're going to shade above. Okay, so at this point, we decide above or below. So plus 2, up 1 over 1. And we're going to make those dashed. And shade above. And you can use different colors. You can get your colored pencils out. Some of you artistic folk can shade a little differently. Okay, that's that one. Now let's look at a vertical line, because that's what X is. It's vertical. And it's at -3. So -3, vertical. Now this time, it's going to be solid. Solid. And we can't quite go above or below, but think, we want X values less than or under -3. So the values that are under -3 are things like -4, -5, -6, and essentially everything to the left of -3. So in that case, it kind of points towards where you want to shade. Okay, so that is graphing those one by one. On the back here, we then are going to sketch systems of them. And these ones are basically just 2 graphs at once. Okay, so as we graph this first one, you need to remember y less than -2. That's a horizontal line at 2. Now I used a solid line as well, because it's less than or equal to. Now let's think, below -2 or below 2 there means everything underneath. So everything under here. So we're going to graph them one at a time. One at a time. So that's the green equation. I will use red, Christmas colors, for the second one. Solve it first. So y is greater than or equal to -x plus 1. That tells me it's going to be solid and it's going to be above. And we're going to plot 1 and go down 1 over 1. Negative slope. Solid line to connect them. And shading above. Above, and I said I'd use red. Now when we do that, notice how in this section everything is shaded twice. So I'm going to highlight this section here. That is where the real answers are, is where everything is double shaded. So the yellow area are the answers, or is the answer. You could erase everything else if you want, okay, and just have that yellow region represented. That is what I'd be looking for most particularly, okay. Number 6, so let's look at another one. If you want to pause and write this out into slope-intercept form, that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So 2y is greater than or equal to -x plus 6. That means y is greater than or equal to -1/2 x plus 3. Okay. Below, we're going to have -2y is greater than -3x. What's that like? Plus 2. Divide by -2. Remember, that's going to change our sign. So less than positive 3/2 x minus 2. So these are the equations I actually want to graph. So same colors. Green, I will do the y is greater than. So at 3, down 1 over 2. What type of line? That's going to be a solid line. So I'll use a nice solid line here. It's a little sloppy. And if you said above, you're on the right track. So remember, all those things, shading, line type, and above. Let's think about this one. What type of line type? It's going to be dashed. What type of shading? Below. And we'll just graph it as before. So -2, this time up 3, over 2, over 2, 1, 2, 3, 2. A solid line, actually a dashed line, sorry. And below, I graphed that one funky, right about there. Yep. And below that line here. So really, the only place our solutions are right in that yellow triangle there. Okay, so graphing, shading, and line types. Alrighty, let's get through last two here. I know it's a little extra problems for you, but you can handle it. They're nothing too challenging. These are already solved for, so you should take the moment. It's going to be a dashed line because less than, and it's going to be above. And this one is going to be a solid line, and it's going to be below. So let's take a look at both of those. -1 and the -x. Dashed line and above. So I recommend write all those little things for yourself. At 3, we have a negative slope, 1/1. And a solid line. And below this one. So it's kind of hard to see, but where everything is crossed twice is this section right in there. So that yellow section is where things are crossed twice. That's where the answers are. And number 8 here, write yourself out. What is your game plan? You can use a dashed line, and I'm going to shade below. And what's your game plan here? A solid line and above. Again, above is greater than, below is less than. So up 3, you can do the first graph in pink. And negative slope, 1/1. Dashed. And below. I'm going too fast. You guys can always hit pause. I mean, that's the idea of it. We're slow motion on YouTube. Blue will be the other one. -2. And up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Over 1. 1, 2, 3. Up. Can't go that way. Can't go that way either. So I'll just use those two. Solid line. Right on through. Boop. And above, so pay attention to what line we're at. And where everything crosses are the solutions. So we are going to practice that a bit more. You guys should have the hang of it, but graphing, that is something that kind of plagues a few of you. So practice those. Try out the questions that continue, and have a awesome day. This is going to be a smiley face for you. Come on, Smiley. Have a nice day, everybody.